Hello, this is Yaro. In a moment, you're going to hear from Chuck Frey, who's going to teach you how you can set up a directory and use that as an income stream on your blog or website. Before that interview begins, though, I'd like to invite you, as always, to join my EJ Insider Interviews Club if you're not yet a member. If you like this interview with Chuck and you're after more fantastic and inspiring interviews that really teach you the how-to as well as the strategy and the technical aspects of making money online, the EJ Insider Interviews Club contains interviews with million-dollar bloggers and information publishers as well as email newsletter marketers. So these are people I've handpicked to interview and create exclusive interviews. They're not released anywhere else. This is not on my free podcast. This is a special series of the best interviews I've done. They go often for as long as even 2 hours in the case of Rich Schefrin, but they average about an hour to an hour and a half long for each interview. And we go through the entire background story of these very successful people. So if you like my free EJ podcast, you will love the Interviews Club. To join, go to ejinsider.com/interviews. That's where you can see all the details about the program, what you receive, and listen to samples as well, so you can see exactly what's inside the program. Once again, that's ejinsider.com/interviews for all the details about my Interviews Club. That's it from me. Here is the interview. Hello, this is Yaro Starak, and welcome to an Entrepreneur's Journey podcast. Today, my guest is Chuck Frey, who got in touch via email to talk about the subject of monetizing with directories, which is something I've not really ever had anyone come on my show to talk about. I haven't written about it before either. And Chuck has actually built a niche directory as an income stream on a blog of his, and is also now teaching how to use directories to make money. And he's making about $8,000 to $10,000 a year from this little directory in quite a specific niche of mind mapping software. So it's not bad for a side income stream off a blog. Now, I know a lot of my listeners, including myself actually, anyone who has a following could potentially look at adding a directory as an income stream. So that's why Chuck is here to talk about that. Chuck, thank you for coming on my show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Chuck is also a previous student of my blog mastermind program, so we'll probably talk a little bit about how that helped grow your blog. But just before we began this interview, I was talking about Chuck's background, and he tells me he was born in a log cabin. So we're going to have to start there, Chuck. Where was this log cabin?
I'm just kidding, actually.
Oh, come on. Okay, so where were you born and raised then?
I was born in upstate New York and grew up in the Milwaukee area.
Do they have log cabins there?
Further in northern Wisconsin, yes.
Okay, we'll just pretend you were born in northern Wisconsin in a log cabin.
Okay.
Okay, being where you're from, did you have a naturally entrepreneurial upbringing, or were you sort of looking at a career path because of the influences around you when you were younger?
I sort of found my own way, if you will. My background is as a journalist, specifically print journalism, but I ended up taking a side turn early in my career into business-to-business public relations and never looked back. And after doing that for about 8-10 years, I got the opportunity to create a new position within a trade association to put them on the web when that was brand new. And worked there for 14 years, managed the growth of that, including the association's website and websites for several large trade shows, which is where the whole directory angle comes in. And I took what I learned from that and created several web properties. One of them was innovationtools.com, which operated from 2002 until last year. And at that point, it was absorbed into another site, another innovation site from Europe. But during that decade, it was the world's largest innovation portal site. And the mind mapping software blog, which is the other major site that I run, is kind of an offshoot of that, focused specifically on visual mapping software.
So were these sites that you started, were you just, it sounds like you liked your job enough, you were doing it for 14 years. So did you start these side projects just because you wanted to explore other interests, or were you sort of thinking, no, I'm ready to quit the rat race and move on to running my own business?
The intent was to start it as a part-time business and hopefully grow it into full-time. That hasn't quite materialized with the problems with the economy, but it's been a nice add-on to my income. And I find that there's a nice synergy between what I do on my own time, my web properties, and what I do for my full-time job. They kind of cross-fertilize each other.
Okay. So you mentioned you were at trade shows and you got the idea for online directories from there. Can you explain that?
Most trade shows these days have virtual trade shows, websites that are primarily directories to help people who are going to be attending a show, or perhaps they're not going to the show, but they still want to know about all the latest and greatest products that are going to be introduced there. Well, these virtual trade show directories provide a way to bring buyers and sellers together. For people who are going to the show, usually there's some way to put them on a short list so that when they hit the ground, they can be very efficient about walking that show and seeing the short list of key exhibitors that they want to see. But even if you're not going to the show, there's still a lot of value there in that you can learn something about what the company is exhibiting. Usually it's a new product or service or technology, and click through to the vendor's website. And I found these to be very, very effective in the B2B markets that I was working in for this trade association, and decided to try my hand at that on my own properties. And in the process, learned quite a bit about what works, what doesn't, what you have to do to attract advertisers, and more importantly, keep them renewing year after year.
So I'm curious, the physical trade show directories, did people charge for that? Because I thought it would be just a case of if you're an exhibitor at the trade show, you just get put into the directory. It's just like a helpful service. Or is there actually a component where you can pay money and get a premium listing or something like that?
That's it exactly, and that's what intrigued me, was the ability to monetize it. Those companies, particularly the smaller ones that are almost invisible to the end user, they really need help standing out, and a virtual trade show kind of leveled the playing field, if you will, helping some of the small people to attract customers, to contact them online, as well as see them at the physical trade show.
Okay. Do you know, like, what do they normally charge for something like that?
It varies, but it's a significant amount of money for the trade shows that I was promoting, one of which was the largest in any industry in North America in the years in which it was held, which is like every 3 years.
What was the topic of that one?
Construction equipment.
Interesting. Okay. Who knew construction equipment was so popular?
Oh, it's a gigantic trade show, about 1.5 million net square feet.
I guess you got to get the the equipment in there, right?
Yes, you do, and frankly, the size of the show was a factor in why these virtual trade show directories were so important, because a lot of these little vendors with 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 foot booths just got swallowed up by all this enormous exhibit space. So it was really critical that they get on that short list and have an opportunity to tell their story, which was the part that intrigued me. With the directories that I created, it basically brings buyers and sellers together. It gives the seller, in the case of my mind mapping directory, to tell in their own words what makes their solution special. And it is a very crowded niche, by the way, so customers are confused. They know there's a lot of solutions out there, everybody's screaming at them, but they don't really know what makes each one different and which one they should select. So the directory brings all this together in a very condensed format, and so it gives some of the smaller startup companies a chance to tell their story, which you can't really do in a banner ad, but you can do in a headline in 50 to 75 words, and it becomes a source of leads for them, as well as providing a useful service to the person visiting the website.
Right. So when I think of directories, I normally think of like an online, basically a link, a bunch of links to other related websites. It's one of the oldest formats of, back in the day, it was an SEO technique, actually. You'd go get your site listed in the Yahoo directory and any other sort of relevant directories before, that sort of became a less effective, SEO technique. But back then, you go to a site, you enter your website's name, the URL, click click enter, and you'd be listed in whatever category you selected once you were approved. Maybe you could write a paragraph about what you're doing, but it sounds like these directories, there was a lot more space for telling a story by what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned that type of early web directory. I had created one of those on my innovationtools.com site. It was basically a hierarchical, multi-level subject directory to the broad topic of innovation. And I discovered, since it was database driven, it was fairly easy to have my developer add some features to that. So for those vendors who wanted to stand out, particularly if it was a crowded niche that they were playing in, they were more than willing to pay some money to make sure that they were above the fold, that they were the first in the listing of 20 or so companies, so customers could find them more easily.
So was that your first taste of monetizing a directory?
Yes.
Okay, so at that point, how big was your innovation site?
In terms of traffic?
Yeah, because I'm curious. Normally I think of a directory as something that, in order to deliver value to the people who list in the directory, there has to be some kind of traffic. But you've got some fairly niche-specific subjects here, so I'm thinking we're not needing tens of thousands of daily visitors to make this a profitable venture. And why I'm asking this is, there might be someone listening to this who has a small cooking blog that's only on vegan cooking, and they only have 500 visitors a day or something. So it's not huge, it's not small, and they're thinking now, maybe I could add a directory to what I'm doing and list all the different vegan restaurants in America or something like that, or give that option and see if I can also then make some money from premium listings and so forth. So I kind of want to tie it back to the listener and sort of think, how much traffic do you need to make this potentially work?
At its peak, innovationtools.com had about 200,000 uniques a month. The mind mapping software blog maybe has about 5,000 uniques, and it's quite profitable even at that smaller level of traffic.
Yeah, okay, so 5,000 uniques is not a ton. That's less than 500 a day. So, okay, so maybe tell the story here. So you've seen the idea in trade shows. You already had your innovation website at that stage, and you already had your mind mapping site, or did they come later?
The mind mapping site came later.
Okay, so you had the innovation one, and then you think, let's see if this will work as a directory format. So, to begin with, I'm assuming you must think, what software do I use? Is that how you went about this?
On the innovation tools site, this hierarchical directory that I was talking about was database driven. It was custom written in ASP with a SQL backend by a developer for me. But on the mind mapping software blog, because it's kind of an experiment to create more lengthy listings and enable links not only to the vendor's website but also their social media channels, I just simply built that out as a WordPress page. And that seemed to work fairly well because these things are updated infrequently, so it was manageable in that way.
Okay, so when you say WordPress page, you mean you just hand enter new entries into the directory? Is that?
I basically hand edit the page. I've got a table with all of this information in it. I'll pull it out into Dreamweaver, tweak it there, and then paste it back into the WordPress page.
Okay, wow. So it's not even running any custom software. It's just WordPress.
No.
Okay.
And there are custom software solutions out there, and I do cover those in the Business Directory Profits ebook.
Okay, well, what do you recommend nowadays? Like that's obviously a very, very simple solution, but I can imagine if going to maybe a slightly larger niche, if you're getting quite a lot of submissions a day, you don't want to be going and editing a page on your WordPress blog manually. It'll take a lot of time. Right. So you prefer to maybe just be clicking the approve button in some software. So what do you recommend in terms of software?
As I said, I list them in my book. I haven't really reviewed them. I gathered together descriptions of them in one place, and they really vary in what their purpose is. Some of them are designed for creating these multi-tiered hierarchical directories. If you've got a very large space in which you're publishing, and you want to be able to accommodate many different types of products within that niche, then that's a good solution. And by the way, these are all database driven. They're not manual. So they do have the workflow that you were talking about where people can submit their own listings, pay with a credit card, and then it gets staged until you have a chance to approve it. And then there are other directories that are more suited for local directories, say within a region of a country, or a particular tourist area, for example, where there may be a lot of services and businesses that people want to know about, whether it's hotels, restaurants, local attractions, that sort of thing. There are specific WordPress directory products that serve just that type of directory.
Okay, well, I'll give you a chance to mention where to get your ebook now, because that's probably the first thing people want to see is a list of software options. I'm sure you could go to the WordPress plugin directory and look up directory plugins, and even just do a general Google search to find them. But give us your website address for the book. Thanks, Chuck.
It's business directory profits, all one word, .net.
Okay. So let's say we've picked a tool, whether it's going to just be even a basic WordPress page or we're going to install a custom plugin. What's your tips with this? Like, I'm assuming I'd come up with some categories that would be right for my audience, and how do you sort of decide pricing and what to offer for premium, all those little things with a directory?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to tailor the features of the directory to your audience. So have a keen sense of who your audience is, maybe even create some personas for that. And then look at what the natural categorization of your niche is, and start to lay that out either in an outline or a mind map. So you have a sense for what the makeup of the space is, and then take a look at how many vendors are within each of those sub-niches to see if there's a critical mass of people who could advertise within this or have sponsored listings.
Now, to me, the obvious example is if you're in a product-focused niche and you're going to list all the products. That's what your mind mapping software blog does, right? So just for anyone who wants to check that out, you can go to mindmappingsoftwareblog.com and click the product directory, and you'll just see this basic page that Chuck has created with these products listed. Now, that makes sense if I was, I love tennis. If I had a tennis blog, I could list all the tennis rackets and tennis balls for sale in a directory, and I could potentially charge premium for any companies who want to get higher listings or bolder listings or things like that. With the thing I guess I have concerns about is convincing people to actually spend money on this. I could go there and manually add. Maybe let me ask you this question. Do you recommend people manually fill out their directory themselves first, or do they sort of hope that people will come and find it and fill it out? Like, what's your recommendation?
It's really a multifaceted approach. I would start out with just a basic WordPress page until you know what the demand is. I should mention at this point that I point out in the book that this is not for every blog. As you surmised, it's specifically for those that are focused on products or services within your niche. If you've already been doing product reviews on whatever your topic is, that is like the perfect prospect for this type of directory, because you've already got traffic, you've already got readers coming to your site hungry for that type of product information, and now you're just putting the cherry on top, if you will, and giving them another source of value that they can extract from visiting your blog.
Okay, and what's your recommendation for what I said about filling it yourself or waiting for people to come?
Couple of things. Number one, once you've developed a pricing scheme, and I give some recommendations in there. Typically for my mind mapping blog, I'm asking $1,200 a year, but I'll discount that to $800, or I'll offer some other sort of incentive to sign up, say 18 months for the price of 12 months. You may even give away a couple of listings if you've got a company that's really made a commitment to your blog in terms of advertising or other sort of sponsorship. Throw this in as a freebie, as a thank you for supporting your blog. I have one listing in my directory who I've actually developed a barter arrangement with. He doesn't pay me anything for his company's listing, but he helps do some tweaking and some design work on another blog that I run. And it's going to take a bit of experimentation, see what kind of pushback you get. I mean, obviously, you need to come up with a list of prospects and do some marketing to them. And what I recommend is you try and get at least 4 to 6 listings there, just a nucleus of advertisers, and then you need to promote it aggressively to your readers. It's kind of a chicken and egg type thing. You have to sort of do both simultaneously, because the advertisers aren't going to be interested if there's not traffic to that page, but you have to build the traffic. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep, of course, the classic networks effects problem like all sites have at the start. So how do you do that? Do you just sort of juggle? Like, do you keep telling people you've got a directory? And I mean, I was thinking, let's say, as an example for Entrepreneur's Journey, my own blog, I could put products in there that I've used or I recommend. There's certainly a lot of things like Aweber software, and then of course WordPress and WordPress plugins I'm using, membership scripts I use for my programs, and even courses and things that I've taken and recommend. So I could go and create the hierarchical structure around those sort of categories, and maybe I could even have like a public listing of other blogs to help my followers get some exposure for their blogs. Let's say I've done that, but nothing's in there yet. And here's I guess an important question for me. I'd be curious about, there's obviously an opportunity to do this with affiliate marketing, because I could fill my directory with links using affiliate links to sell these products and services. So I don't necessarily need, I guess, to have paying sponsors straight away if I potentially have traffic. But on the flip side, I might want Aweber to give me $1,000 a year to be in my directory, as opposed to promoting them as an affiliate. So and I wouldn't even know. I think if I was going to do this, I would try and fill it with something to begin with myself, not getting any paid advertisers, just so that once I put the word directory on my navigation bar and write a blog post and tell people that it's there, that it's not empty completely. Is that the sort of thing you would suggest?
Yes, absolutely. And I talk about that in the book, that if you have some existing affiliate relationships, that you can use some of those to seed this directory. But I caution readers to be careful how they do that. You can't just fill it up with anything and everything. These need to be products that you really believe in and use. Otherwise, you're going to destroy your trust in the process.
That's a good point. I've seen a lot of directories that are pretty much junk, just people filling everything in there. So it's almost like less is more. Only having a few key things in the directory might be better than just putting everything you find into it.
And one of the things that I found when I was getting ready to launch this mind mapping directory is I went out to all of the vendors in this space. And these are people who I have relationships with. I've reviewed their software for years. I've helped them with other marketing campaigns like single sponsor emails and things like that. And I basically said, here's what I've created. Here's the pricing model. Here are the specifications on what you need to send me for a directory listing. And it's first come, first serve. And those companies that were most eager to promote themselves jumped at the opportunity, because they realized if they got to be above the fold, that was obviously a really good thing. And my top couple of advertisers have held on for, I think, 3 to 4 years now, and they will not let go of it because they know they've got a premium position in that directory.
Yeah, interesting. I noticed you really have this sort of attitude where let's keep 3 or 4 companies who are giving me $1,000 or whatever a year and just keep them paying, rather than sort of trying to fill it up with lots and lots of people. It's just lock in a few guys who are getting value from it, and it's a fairly consistent income stream. It's kind of like a permanent advertisement on your site in a lot of ways.
Yes, it is. And I've made a conscious decision in the mind mapping software blog just to focus on those software vendors, with a couple of exceptions. There's one site called biggerplate.com that is a huge gallery of mind maps that you can download and use in the software, kind of as a starting off point, or just for inspiration to understand what this software can actually do. And I've given them a complimentary listing because they've started up some conferences, and I really believe in what they're doing, and the publisher of that site does some things to help me out as well, some complimentary advertising. So it's kind of a one hand washes the other arrangement. But I've limited it consciously to just the vendors of mind mapping software. And as I have conversations with companies, as new companies enter the market, and we start to talk about ways in which they can promote themselves, a directory listing is one of the things I'll routinely recommend that they do.
Yeah, I can really see that as an easy sell. Like if you're already offering banner advertising on your site, even just as a bundling tool, like you mentioned earlier, as a way to close the deal. Listen, I'll give you the banners, and I'll also allow you to have a listing in the directory. Just added benefit, added bonus. It's a simple thing to do, really. And I don't know. I think people are always hesitant about banner advertising because of the nature of banner blindness, and people don't like advertising. But a directory doesn't seem to have that negative feeling as much as the banners do. It feels like it's text for starters, and it's content. So even if it is a promotional tool, it actually can be quite helpful, especially if it's very targeted, like you're saying. You go to a mind mapping software blog to have a look at mind mapping software products. So your directory is basically content that happens to be advertising as well.
Yeah, and it's consistently ranked number 2 or number 3 out of all the pages on my blog month after month. So obviously it's filling a need.
Okay. Well, I don't think there's much else for us to talk about with the actual directory planning, Chuck, because I think it's a fairly straightforward concept. By the sounds of things, you're recommending, correct me if I'm wrong, you start with a WordPress page that you manually update with text, and you can see that in action on Chuck's blog, mindmappingsoftwareblog.com. He's just got a picture of the products with a little paragraph and a title for each of them. And if that's going well, you can look to switch to a software script, which are available. And you can check out Chuck's guide for that, which again, what's the address for your ebook?
Businessdirectoryprofits.net.
Okay.
And if I could point out just one more thing,
Sure.
we were talking about the fact that these are mainly text. That has turned out to be one of the cool things for advertisers. Because if you look at what they need to do in order to play in this, anybody can write text. They probably already have box shots or product shots or logos that they can send you. They don't have to go to their ad agency or to their creative person and have a banner designed. So it's actually quite easy from their standpoint.
Are your links in your directory follow links? Like from an SEO standpoint, they're actually providing benefit too, right?
Yes, and I actually use some external link tracking so that when it comes time to renew, I can point to how many times each of the links within their directory listing have been clicked on.
Okay. What's the software for that?
budurl.pro, I think is the website address.
I guess you could just even use something like Pretty Links if you're on WordPress, which is a plugin, and just create a link for each product and report that back. I'm assuming a lot of the directory scripts also provide that data as part of their inbuilt features.
Absolutely.
Okay. Another good technique. So you're basically giving people stats to show at the end, start of a new year. Listen, you've had 10,000 clicks this year. Do you want to renew $800? They'll look at the numbers and go, that's pretty straightforward. Yes. And I love the fact that it's yearly too. It's the sort of thing where you almost could lock in 20 advertisers at $1,500 a head, and then you made your salary for the entire year at January. Which for those lifestyle bloggers listening to this, I think they love the idea of having your cash sorted at the start of the year, and then you can just sort of cruise around with the rest of the year if that's what you want to do.
Well, as you accurately pointed out at the beginning of our talk, Yaro, mind mapping software is an incredibly narrow niche. If you have something a bit wider, you can actually do quite well with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see. I'm quite tempted to have a go myself. Like I've thought about expanding a resources page. There's quite a few bloggers in my space who have a page on their blog where they list the resources that they use, and it's very centric to their business and what they're using. They don't really go beyond their own tools, and that's very similar to a directory, but it's smaller, I think. Well, maybe not that smaller compared to the one I'm looking at your site. It's quite small too, but the difference between a directory versus a resources page, the resources page is pretty much purely about affiliate income, where directory, you've got the opportunity to do affiliate income plus take some paying sponsors, which just makes the resources page better. So I'm thinking now, maybe I'll call my page a resources directory instead, and then have the option to take paying advertisers there.
Yeah, the semantics here aren't just on the surface. A directory, kind of the main mission of a directory is to help people find solutions. They can go to Google and they can find the vendors who make a particular type of product or offer a particular type of service, but it's interspersed with all sorts of other crap. As you're well aware, if you use Google or any of the other search engines, this is a very distilled list of the best companies in that niche, and it's kind of an executive summary of what each company does. And so there's a lot of value there. A visitor can actually compare and contrast them and decide which ones they want to click through on and learn more about.
Which, to me, would highlight the need for you to be selective with what you allow in your directory then. You can't just take anyone and everyone.
Right.
Yeah. So it's almost like the concept of, like I just mentioned, resource page / directory. It's like you almost want to, instead of just saying, this is what I use, this is what I recommend, and you can choose from. So I currently use Office Autopilot to run my email newsletter, but I also recommend you check out Aweber, MailChimp, GetResponse, as they're all good, reputable services, and you compare and contrast them. And I might put them all in my directory with affiliate links, of course, to start with. But if I notice the clicks are working, I could say, hey, GetResponse, do you want to pay for a premium listing? I'll put you first in the list with bold or something like that for $1,000 a year. And see if they're interested. That the sort of thing where you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. And one other point I want to bring up, you talked about the idea of an annual fee, that it's real easy for them. Some of the companies, particularly within the niche that I'm writing about, are fairly small and entrepreneurial. And the idea of paying $800 or $1,200 is a big chunk for them. So don't be afraid to be creative in your pricing. I've actually created a button on my advertising page that allows them to sign up for $100 a month via PayPal, just to help them manage their cash flow. Or perhaps you take payments quarterly, and that might be a good way to let somebody in kind of on a trial basis, to have them try it for 3 or 6 months, see if it works for them, rather than making a full year commitment.
Playing with pricing, yeah, that can certainly help.
Yeah.
Depending on your niche, that's very specific to your niche, I'd say. So.
Right.
Okay, Chuck, what's your plans for the future? I know you're still working your job, and these are sort of side income streams. Are you looking to bring out new websites and create more directories and so on, or grow this one, or what you doing?
Well, I want to grow it. I'm in the process of redesigning it so it's a bit more compact and so that it plays well on mobile devices. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I'm looking at, because that's obviously a growing area where waited for people to access information. Potentially other directories. The innovation tools site I talked about, without telling a big, long, sordid story, I got into a joint venture that went really badly, and I lost the site in the process. But I've always had a very strong interest in creativity techniques and tools, and that's something I consider myself to be more of an expert in than the broad topic of innovation, because I haven't actually been a corporate innovation practitioner. So the thinking is to potentially create a new blog focused around creativity tools and techniques and helping people take their thinking to the next level.
Okay. Well, looking forward to seeing you get that out the door. And just a reminder for people listening in, mindmappingsoftwareblog.com to check out the actual directory that Chuck has in action, and also businessdirectoryprofits.net to download his ebook. And I'm assuming there's an email opt-in there to get the book, correct?
It's actually for sale there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm in the process of creating kind of a maybe 4 or 5 page summary that people will be able to download for free, just to get a sense of my thinking before they actually invest in the directory.
I have to
in
tell
the
you,
book.
you've got to get yourself a free newsletter before you start selling that book, I think. Chuck,
Right.
it's hard to send people directly to a sales page. I want to see some samples, some free training, maybe a 5-day email course or something like that would be nice. But,
Right,
up to you.
right.
That's
Yeah,
what I
I'm
teach.
working on it.
So. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Chuck. And any last words before I wrap this up?
No, thank you very much, Yaro.
All right. Thanks, Chuck, for coming on my show. Everyone who's listening in, you know where to go. If you head to entrepreneurs-journey.com, you can get more podcast interviews like this, or you can Google my name, which is Yaro, Y-A-R-O. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe via iTunes and make sure you give me a lovely 5-star review, as that helps my podcast. And since this is free, that's all I'm really asking you to do in return, is to just give me that review and subscribe on iTunes. That's it for me. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you on the next interview. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Chuck Frey, and you're now thinking about potentially adding a directory as an income stream to your business. Before you go, please do come and check out my EJ Insiders Interview Club if you're looking for more amazing interviews like this. You can go to www.ejinsider.com/interviews and join the club there. You'll get 2 new interviews minimum each month, although I sometimes include a bonus interview as well. You get access to my entire back catalog in the podcast archives, as well as my bonus interviews that were only released in my paid training programs. So you're getting basically every single interview I've ever done, as well as a brand new stream of 2 new interviews each month. On top of that, you also receive action plans, which are handwritten by me. And what I do is I listen to the 2 interviews that I did that month, and I extract the key leverage points from my guests. So I'm looking at what I believe are the things they did that resulted in the exponential result. And it's always 1 or 2 things that people do that really takes them to the next level. So what I try and do is take out those points, simplify it, and present it to you in an action plan that's somewhere between 10 and 20 pages. I also give you some steps you can take. It is an action plan. So these are things you can do to immediately action the leverage points that these people have, so you can take away what they're doing, apply it to your business, and start getting exponential results as well. Once more, you can go to ejinsider.com/interviews for all the information about this club, and I really look forward to seeing you on the inside. My name is Yaro Starak. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.